welcome back to the biology classes. In the previous session, we were studying about AIDS. Today, I am continuing the same topic. What is the name of the virus which causes AIDS? Yes, it is called HIV or Human Immunodeficiency Virus. In today's class, we will be studying about the replication of the HIV inside the human cells and also the diagnostic tests which are done to detect the disease AIDS. So let us start with the replication of the HIV. For any molecule to enter the cell, it must be having certain barriers to cross. The cell membrane is the outermost barrier in an animal cell. So a molecule has to pass through the cell membrane if it has to enter the cell. Cell membrane, as you know, is selectively permeable. It does not allow the entry and exit of all molecules. As a result, there has to be some mechanism to convince the cell that the molecule is a necessary one so that it can enter the cell. The human immunodeficiency virus infects the cell by entering it. So it has to cross the cell membrane. How does it do so? And it affects only certain cell types that has been found by research. The cells which are affected by the human immunodeficiency virus are the immune cells, the macrophages, T helper cells, monocytes and dendrocytes, out of which you should remember mainly the macrophages and T helper cells. Now what is unique to these cells? Why does the virus enter only these cells? To tell you more about this, let us consider an analogy. For example, you are going to watch a cinema. You go to the movie theatre, you take a ticket. And at the entrance of the cinema hall, a person will ask you for your ticket. Once he sees the ticket, he will count the number of persons in that ticket. He will allow you to enter the cinema hall because the ticket gives you a valid entry to the cinema hall. You can consider this in the case of molecules entering the cell also. When a molecule comes to the barrier of the cell, that is the cell membrane, that molecule has to convince the cell membrane that it has to enter the cell. The virus also has to convince the cell membrane of the cells that it has to enter the cell. How it does so is to bind to certain molecules on the surface of the cell. Like for example, the interaction with the ticket checker at the entrance helps you to enter the cinema hall. Interaction with certain molecules on the surface of the cells helps the virus to enter the cell. The name of these receptors on the cell surface is known as CD4, or you can also say CD4 plus receptors. And there are some co-receptors which are known as CCR5 and CXCR4. Don't be confused about all these names. I will tell you in detail later. Now remember at least one receptor, the main one, which is known as CD4. CD4 stands for cluster of differentiation 4, and it is a unique receptor found only in certain cells, that is macrophages, T helper cells, monocytes and dendrocytes. These are all immune cells. So remember, the HIV infects only the immune cells due to this reason, because it can bind to receptors on the surface of these specific cell types, and the name of the receptor is CD4. It is a glycoprotein which is present on the surface of these cells, and normally you know that no cell will allow a virus to enter. So this cell surface receptor is not for the viral entry, it is for our body for its own immune responses. It is a receptor which binds to antibodies, then certain antigen presenting cells, and helps in the immune responses of the body. So normally it has a physiological function. The virus is tricking us. It has proteins on the surface which binds to these CD4 receptors and enters our cells. Before we proceed to the entry of the virus into the cell, we should revise the structure of the virus once more. If you remember, this is the detailed structure of the retrovirus. Outside you can see a lipid envelope. On the envelope you can see two transmembrane glycoproteins and a docking glycoprotein, GP41 and GP120. Remember these two glycoproteins because they are of importance in binding to the cells. Then you can also remember that there is a second protein coat which is shown by the blue color, and further inside you can see a capsid, a protein coat, which holds the genome of the virus as well as the enzymes, reverse transcriptase and integrase. The genome is two single-stranded RNA molecules. That is why the virus is known as a retrovirus. So remember once more, two glycoproteins GP41 and GP120 which are present on the surface. They will help in membrane binding to the surface of our immune cells. Then a capsid which protects the genome of the virus. The genome is made up of two single-stranded positive sense RNA. Remember, two single-stranded positive sense RNA. What is meant by positive and negative sense RNAs? This you have to look up and tell me in the discussion classes. Okay, it consists of two single-stranded RNA molecules associated with two molecules of integrase as well as reverse transcriptase. The number of the molecule is not constant, but we can mark two integrase and two reverse transcriptase in the capsid core just for convenience sake. You can see the picture of the retrovirus here. Outside, the circle marks the outermost envelope of the virus. Inside, the red color one shows you the capsid. Inside the capsid, you can see the two single-stranded RNA genome associated with reverse transcriptase and integrase enzymes. What happens is, these molecules, when the virus comes to the surface of the cell, for example a macrophage or T helper cell, CD4 receptors present on the surface of the cell. On the surface of the cell, there will be CD4 receptors. CD4 receptors found on the surface of the cell will realize that a molecule which is capable of binding it to has come. In the case of the virus, the molecule which is capable of binding to CD4 plus are GP120 and GP40. So using these two glycoproteins and the CD4 plus receptor, integration or a membrane binding will take place between the virus and the cell membrane of the macrophage. So on the surface of the cell membrane, the receptor will be there. The virus will come and bind to the surface using its glycoprotein 120 and 40. Along with CD4 plus, two other co-receptors may also be involved. One of them is CCR5, or otherwise there is another one called CXCR4. So CCR5 is a co-receptor and CXCR4 is another co-receptor. We will study about these in detail, just remember the names. For the time being, understand that if a cell has a CD4 receptor on its surface, the HIV will bind to that CD4 using its glycoprotein 40 and glycoprotein 120. And this process is called membrane docking. And docking is followed by membrane fusion, that is, the outer membrane of the virus fuses with the plasma membrane of the cell. This results in pushing of the content of the virus, that is the capsid coat containing the viral genome and the enzymes into the cell. So you can see here the capsid along with the genome of the virus is entering the cell. Immediately after it enters, a process known as uncoating takes place. That means the outside capsid coat will get disintegrated. You can see the proteins getting disintegrated, and one protein which is present here significantly is known as a P24. In the diagram of the retrovirus also you can note down that there is a protein which is known as P24 which is present in the capsid. Of the many proteins present, this is most important. So P24 protein containing capsid molecule is disintegrated. It falls into the cytoplasm of this cell, and the RNA are also released into the cytoplasm along with the enzymes reverse transcriptase and integrase. In the next step, the reverse transcriptase present along with the RNA helps in converting the RNA molecule of the virus into a double-stranded DNA. So the RNA molecule is now converted to a double-stranded DNA of the virus. Let us say this is the double-stranded DNA. So RNA is converted to double-stranded DNA which is catalyzed by the enzyme reverse transcriptase. Now here is another assignment for you. Reverse transcriptase helps to convert the single-stranded RNA molecule into double-stranded DNA. Now along with this, it has one more function. It has another function. Find out what is the other function of reverse transcriptase. Is it clear? Reverse transcriptase is an enzyme which helps to convert the single-stranded RNA of the virus into double-stranded DNA. Along with this function, it has one more function. Okay, find out that function and let us get back to it in the discussion classes. So this is the process. The virus using its membrane will dock to the surface by binding of glycoproteins to the CD4 plus receptor. Then the capsid will be passed into the cytoplasm of the host, and this will disintegrate, releasing the cellular genome. The RNA of the virus will be converted to double-stranded DNA. In the next step, what happens is this double-stranded DNA will be integrated into the genome of the host cell, that is into the macrophage, by using the integrase enzyme which it was carrying all along. So by using the integrase enzyme, the double-stranded DNA is integrated into the host cell genome. Let us say here, the double-stranded DNA is integrated into the host cell genome. This integrated stage is known as prophage. Integrated stage of the virus is known as prophage. Is that clear? Now let us see a more detailed diagram of the viral entry and replication inside the macrophage. Now you can see a detailed diagram of the retroviral entry and membrane fusion. You can see the retrovirus infecting the normal cell, coming to the cell surface, membrane fusion, the viral RNA is introduced into the cell. By the help of the reverse transcriptase, the viral RNA is converted to viral DNA, and the viral DNA is now integrated into the cell as provirus. This is the nucleus of the cell with the host cell DNA. So using the integrase enzyme, the virus will integrate its DNA into the cell. Now you must be wondering how this viral DNA is synthesized. Yes, it is from the using the nucleotide of the host cell itself. The virus, once it injects its RNA along with the enzyme, it uses the machinery of the host. That means it uses all the nucleotides from the cytoplasm of the host to synthesize its DNA. And it is integrated, and sitting inside the host genome, it triggers the host to produce its proteins as well as its RNA replication also takes place. So just as in the normal cell, the DNA of our cell along with the DNA of the virus will remain there in the proviral state. Sometimes it happens that only till here the infection will proceed. The virus will be present in our cell in the proviral state and remain latent like that without producing any symptoms. This can remain for a long period. At that period, the person will not suspect he has AIDS, nor will we test him for AIDS and find any antibodies, because no antibodies will be produced at this stage. So this is rather asymptomatic stage of AIDS. That means the virus will have entered, it will have integrated, but will not produce any significant symptoms. Now certain triggers will cause the virus to translate its proteins. That means RNA is also produced, proteins are also produced simultaneously. And the proteins means the proteins which are present on the surface of the coat protein, capsid, etc. Okay? So the RNA which is produced from the virus will be surrounded by these proteins, and assembly of viruses will take place in the cytoplasm of the macrophage. So DNA will be transcribed to RNA and also is translated into proteins. Both will take place simultaneously. And the RNA molecules, two single-stranded RNA molecules, will get packed as in a virus. This process is known as assembly. Now here when it's packed, we call it as the assembly. But you don't have to draw all this in your diagram. Just remember that RNA is synthesized by the infected cell. Proteins are also synthesized by the infected cell, resulting in the production of new viruses. And these viruses may remain in the macrophage for many days or many months depending on the lifespan, and it may be released into circulation. If it is released into circulation, it will infect other cells. Okay, so remember, the viral RNA is produced, viral proteins are also produced. This will assemble to form new viruses, and thus macrophages will normally act as factories which produce human immunodeficiency virus. Many viruses or virions as we call them will be present inside the macrophages. Later they will be released into circulation, and each virus, the small one, is capable of infecting a new macrophage or a T helper cell or a monocyte or a dendrocyte. So the infection will proceed from one cell to another. See how the virus is tricking us. It is entering the cell, tricking us into believing that it is a molecule which is necessary for the cell. So it will enter the cell, it will use the cell to, like a parasite, to make its DNA, also to make its RNA, also to make its proteins, assemble itself, get ready as a new virus, and then it will be released into the circulation. You can go through the steps once more. You can see the retrovirus infecting T helper cells and macrophages which have CD4 receptors. and it is using CD4 plus CCR5 or CXCR4 to bind, and the binding is helped by HIV envelope proteins, glycoprotein 120 and glycoprotein 4041. Then this results in binding of HIV to the macrophages, resulting in membrane fusion. The viral single-stranded RNA enters the cell along with the reverse transcriptase and integrase enzyme. Then with the help of reverse transcriptase, the single-stranded RNA is converted to double-stranded DNA. It is then integrated by using the enzyme integrase. The integrated stage is known as the provirus. Then the viral DNA directs the synthesis of viral RNA and viral proteins. Assembly of the new viruses will take place. Release of the progeny viruses, and each such virus can affect a new T helper cell. This is very important with respect to your exam point of view. Infected cell will survive even when the viruses are being replicated. That is why the virus can replicate to many numbers within the infected cell. Such cells which are harboring the virus, they are known as factories. That is why macrophages are referred to as HIV factories. Then during this time, many people will not produce any symptoms, or you can say that is an asymptomatic stage. It is also known as a latent phase, where the person is actually infected but no symptoms are produced. This stage may be as long as a few months or sometimes many years. That is why we have many persons carrying the AIDS virus without intentionally knowing it and transmitting it to the people around them. You can see an example of or a magnified image of a T helper cell which is normal, and you can see an HIV infected T helper cell. You can see the infection has changed the cell to such a lot of extent. The yellow molecules are actually showing the virus. Now let us go to the diagnosis of AIDS. Early detection is an important thing in the diagnostic procedures. Any diagnostic method, we are using two terms which you should be familiar. One term is called antigen, another term is called antibody. Antigen is any foreign substance which can enter the body and elicit an immune response. You have heard a lot about antigens in the previous section of the chapter. So antigen is any body which can elicit an immune response, which involves antibody production also. An antibody is a molecule which is produced in response to an antigenic attack. So when an antigen enters our body will produce many immune responses, out of which one is antibody mediated response. Is that clear? An antigen and antibody are highly specific. That means you can detect an antigen using an antibody, or you can detect an antibody using an antigen, because the reaction between them or the interaction between them is highly specific. They will bind to each other with high specificity. This is due to one reason: our body produces antibodies after the antigen has entered, and we will look at the antigen and we will make a specific antibody to it so that this antibody can bind to the antigen. That is how we usually make antibody. So antigen and antibody are highly specific to each other. Remember that specificity. Similarly, you have also studied about enzymes and substrates, isn't it? An enzyme has a particular site which is known as the catalytic site, into which a substrate will fit. You have called it as the lock and key hypothesis. Enzyme substrate interaction is as specific as a lock and a key. So you have to remember these two specificities before we proceed to the diagnostic procedures of HIV infection. You can see a table here which shows you different stages after the HIV infection. This is just for your knowledge. At day 0, viral infection will start. You will not have any particular symptoms or changes in the body. Then in 2 weeks, during the time of 2 weeks, if you remember the diagram we drew, the P24 antigens will start appearing in the cells of the individual, and this individual will also have provirus in the integrated stage. If possible, you can detect this viral RNA in the genome of T helper cells and macrophages within 2 weeks. But the tests which are used for this process are called real-time PCRs. You must be hearing a lot about real-time PCR because now we are using it for early detection of coronavirus. So the same technique, real-time PCR, can be used to detect the infection by an HIV if you suspect it, because it is an early detection procedure. It happens in 7 to 14 weeks, after which the P24 antigen levels will normally drop down and will peak later in the infective stage. We cannot sure when it will peak again, but the high peak will be there. That is P24 concentration will be high during the initial stages of the HIV infection. Also, the provirus will be there in the infected cells like those of macrophages or T helper cells. Then 16th day, usually the P24 antigen will be having a high level. 16 to 28 days is called a seroconversion state. Seroconversion means it is a phase in which the body will start producing antibodies against that HIV. That means anti-HIV antibodies will be produced against different antigens of the HIV virus. Don't think that the whole HIV virus is an antigen. Each part of the HIV will function as an antigen. For example, P24 is an antigen, P17 is an antigen. So, whatever molecule is entering our body, a small protein part also, that will function as an antigen. And we will start producing a variety of antibodies against this human immunodeficiency virus targeted against different antigens. And the most HIV antibodies, that is anti-HIV antibodies, are directed against the P24 antigen. So, 28 days onwards, normally 95% of the people will start responding against the virus inside the body by producing antibodies against it. That stage onwards is called the seroconversion stage. So, is that clear? So, it's day 0, you have an infection. Day 7 to 14, that is called viral loading or viral titer. At that time, you can notice the provirus in the integrated stage by using techniques such as real-time PCR. You can also detect the presence of P24 antigens. On day 24 onwards, you can notice, 28 onwards, you can notice the antibodies being produced in the body. Roughly, you can say by the 3rd week onwards, you can detect antibodies or P24 antigen in the initial stages of the 16 to 24 days. And before that, you can detect this by using real-time PCR. Once HIV attacks our body, the following molecules can be detected. This is the order in which we will be detecting the molecules. Viral RNA will be detected in first 2 weeks, as I told you, and you can detect it by using real-time PCR. Then P24 antigen will be produced within 16 days and anti-HIV antibodies will be produced in 16 days onwards. So, ideally what we do is for early detection we will be using real-time PCR. There you are detecting the presence of viral RNA. What you do is you will isolate the cells from the patient. That means you will be isolating the macrophages, T helper cells, monocytes, dendrocytes and all. You will isolate the DNA from these cells. You will amplify it by adding primers for the viral RNA sequence or viral DNA sequence. So we can detect whether that viral DNA is present in that isolated DNA. If it is present, it means that the cell is infected. If it is absent, it means it is not present. Thus, you can detect the infection by an HIV at the early stage. But as such, we don't have to study this now. We have to concentrate on the last phase, that is the antibody phase, which is a normal or routine test done for HIV infection. And the routine tests which are employed for HIV infection is the one which tests the presence of antibodies and sometimes the antigen also, mostly antibodies. And the name of the test is ELISA. ELISA is the main test which is used for detection of AIDS. It is a test to detect the antibodies against the HIV antigens in the blood of the patient suspected to be infected with AIDS. It is confirmed by using another test which is known as Western blot. You just have to remember the name of the test. So, ELISA is the main test, Western blot is a confirmatory test. Now, let us go to details of ELISA. ELISA is an abbreviation for Enzyme Linked Immunosorbent Assay, or it is also abbreviated as EIA, which stands for Enzyme Immunoassay. Here, we are using a diagnostic test. It is basically a biological diagnostic test which is used to detect the presence of either antigen or antibody in a sample. Antigen is detected by using antibody or antibody is detected by using antigen. So, I told you this reaction is highly specific. One more specificity is employed in using ELISA. It also uses the specificity of enzyme to its substrate. So, two specificities are used here, antigen to antibody, enzyme to substrate. So, the basic principle of ELISA is based on the specificity of an enzyme to its substrate and the specificity of an antigen to its antibody. And the name sorbent is because if you are using an antigen or antibody, we will be absorbing it onto certain surfaces. That is why it is known as sorbent assay. Assay means estimation, a method used for estimation. You can see the definition. You can also see the principle here. You can see it is used to detect other diseases such as HBV or influenza, hemolytic anemia and so on. We are studying it under the context of detection of AIDS or HIV infection. ELISA uses a machine which is known as an ELISA reader, and we insert a plate which is known as ELISA microplate into the reader to get the result of the assay. Now these small hair holes in the microplate are known as wells. ELISA microplate is made up of polystyrene. 96 micro wells are present in the microplate, and these wells will have antigen or antibody adsorbed onto the surface. Either antigen or antibodies adsorbed onto the surface of the ELISA microplate. Now, just for convenience sake, we will take 3 wells in an ELISA plate and we will see how the reaction will proceed. We are considering an ELISA plate which contains 3 wells, and let us say we have 3 samples. Let's consider the case in which the second sample is positive and 1 and 3 are negative samples. And we are taking the serum from 3 persons, out of which we know 2 is positive, 1 and 3 are not positive. And with this is a microplate well. We are drawing only 3 wells here, and the blue dots represent the antigen adsorbed onto the surface of the plate. So in this method, usually in all the HIV detection methods, you detect the presence of antibodies in a person's serum against human immunodeficiency virus by using an antigen. Okay, so you will take the antigen, coat it onto the surface of the wells, and you will add the serum from the patient and see if that serum contains antibodies to HIV. So these will be basically antigens to HIV. Some specific antigens, say against P24 for example. Okay, so this is an antigen, and we are finding out whether that person has antibodies against this antigen. That means whether that person is infected with HIV. Suppose we are adding serum samples. Okay, let us say we are adding serum samples from the patient. So all these serum samples will be added initially, whether it is positive or negative. You know, antibody is represented by this kind of representation, Y. Okay, so we add a serum sample from the patient initially, and let us imagine that the other 2 serum samples contain antibodies but not for AIDS. Suppose this is the antibody against the HIV. What happens is, when you add serum samples to all the wells, the antibodies which are not specific to the antigen will not bind. You will wash it off. The second stage is you will wash it off, and only those wells which contain antigen will, suppose this is the well which does not contain the antigen. So no antigen antibody binding will be there. Here also no antigen antibody binding will be there, because the antigen, we don't have antibodies to, that person is not infected with HIV. But in the case of this well, the case is another one, because it has antibodies to HIV. That person is actually infected with antibodies. So the antibody present in the serum sample will bind to the antigen, because that person has AIDS. He has produced antibodies against the virus. So this is step number 1. So here we have the antibody bound to the antigen, and this complex is known as antigen antibody complex. So in the well which is positive, we will have antigen antibody complexes. Then as step 2, what we will do is, we will add some molecule to detect this complex, because it is not detectable. We cannot see the antigen antibody complex. So here we know that there is an antigen antibody complex, but we cannot see the antigen antibody complex. To detect the primary antibody, we will be adding a secondary antibody. The secondary antibody is made by using the primary antibody as the target. So the antigen is already bound to the antibody, which is called the primary antibody, and forming what is known as an antigen antibody complex. And we are adding a secondary antibody, and the secondary antibody is also linked to an enzyme. This is actually for visibility. You cannot see what is happening in the wells. So to see and understand the amount of antigen or antibody present, we are using this technique. So we have the antigen and antibody bound in the positive wells. Now to all the wells, we will be adding secondary antibodies linked to the enzyme. That is the next step. So what will happen here? What happens is, The secondary antibody will not find any target in well number 1 and 3 because it does not have antigen antibody complexes. We have washed them off, and while washing, only the antigen antibody complexes are remaining in the second well. In the first and the third wells, there are no antigen antibody complexes. As a result, what happens is when you add the secondary antibody linked to the enzyme, it will bind to the antigen antibody complex present only in the second well. When we wash off, the 1 and third well will clear off the substrate, and only the second well will contain the bound antigen. You can see the antigen being bound to the antibody like this, and the secondary antibody will be bound to this link to the enzyme. Okay, so in the second one only you can see such a phenomenon. You can see the primary antibody bound to the antigen, the secondary antibody bound to the enzyme only in the second well after the washing. All other wells will be free because they are not containing the antibody. Now still we cannot see this. This is not visible. So for getting the color, what we do is we will add a substrate such that the substrate will specifically bind to the enzyme and give a colored product. So when you add the substrate, which well will show the color? Yes, that is correct. Only the well which contains the antigen antibody complex. All the other wells will not give the color because the enzyme substrate reaction will not take place in such wells. So it is possible for us to visually see which well has the infected serum. Is that clear? And by measuring the intensity of the color, you can also understand how much antibodies are there. That means to what extent the infection has proceeded. The spectrophotometric estimation of the color in the well will give you the count of antibodies. So we can find out the presence of antibodies in the serum of the patient by using this technique, which is known as ELISA. They are using two specificities: binding of antigen to the antibody, and then you are using the enzyme substrate specificity. So by using a substrate which gives a colored product with the enzyme, you are noticing the color and finding out the wells which are positive for the sample. Now we don't have to do anything manually. We have to insert it into the ELISA reader, and the reader will give you the result. They will tell you these all wells are positive. You just have to trace back the serum samples to see which are the positive ones. It will also give you a titer of the antibody in each well if it is positive. So that is the principle and working of ELISA. Now you can see the steps in ELISA once more. An antigen is immobilized or adsorbed onto a microtiter plate made up of polystyrene. It could be a protein from the virus. Serum or oral fluid from the sample is added to these wells. Wherever the antibodies are present, it will bind specifically to the antigens, and antigen antibody complexes will be formed. Then antigen antibody complexes can be detected by using a secondary antibody which is conjugated to an enzyme. The secondary antibody is made by using primary antibody as the target. Then only in those wells which contain the primary antigen antibody complexes, the secondary antibody will bind. Whenever you add a substrate, if you add a substrate which gives a colored product, the wells containing the anti-HIV antibodies will give a color. The intensity of the color will be proportional to the concentration of the antibody in the sample, and you can estimate it photometrically. You can see a positive well alone in the case of ELISA. This is antigen, this is an antibody. Imagine this is anti-HIV antibody. You are adding a secondary antibody conjugated with the enzyme. You can see how it binds, and when you add a substrate, see how it turns into a color. Here they are showing a particular substrate which is a peroxidase. You don't have to remember the name of the substrate, just understand the specificity in ELISA. We will be studying more in detail about ELISA in biotechnology. Now let us have a quick recap of what we studied in this session. Okay, you studied about replication of the retrovirus. The diagram concerning replication is very important. Then we also studied about the cells which are infected by the retrovirus. They are macrophages, T helper cells mainly. Okay, monocytes and dendrocytes are also involved. Then we studied about diagnostic techniques. Early diagnosis is done ideally by real-time PCR methods. But the normal method which is employed for finding out or detecting HIV infection is ELISA. So by using ELISA, we actually detect the antibodies to HIV in the infected samples. And I also showed you the procedure of ELISA. Remember the expansion, enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay. Then I also gave you a couple of assignments. I told you that reverse transcriptase has two functions and you have to tell me the two functions. One of them I already explained during the course of this session. The second you have to find out. Then there is another thing. There is a metal ion needed for reverse transcriptase to function. You should also tell me the name of that metal ion. And there is something called positive and negative sense RNA. When you talk about RNA viruses, for example, HIV, or you can also talk about the novel coronavirus, they are all RNA viruses. When you study the genome of these viruses, you can see two terms being used, positive sense RNA and negative sense RNA, and you should be able to distinguish between positive and negative sense RNA. So these three questions should be in your mind while you go through the chapter. Google them up and let us meet again during the discussion. Have a nice day.